People with paranoid schizophrenia believe that someone or something is after them, and that they believe they are being attacked and will possibly lose their life. Often, they will develop a series of assumptions where they believe the people around them, even their close ones, has something against them. I think everyone will experience paranoid schizophrenia sometimes in their life, but it will only be mild. People with strong symptoms will think the whole world is going against them. Hello everyone, let's investigate here. Today, we'll be talking about an unsolved murder case. Blair Adams was murdered in a parking lot of under construction hotel off of Interstate 40 outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. At first, you might think this is just another murder case, but after you learn more about it, the more bizarre it became, and mysterious I would say. So what happened to Blair Adams? Who killed him? Or should I say, what killed him? Blair Adams was born in Surrey, British Columbia, in Canada, back in 1964. He was 31-year-old and was an outgoing person who was content with his life. He was working as a construction worker at the time. In June of 1996, Blair's mother, Sandra Edwards, discovered that there was something wrong with her son. Since he started to act really suspicious, and he often had wild mood swings, something was obviously very much the matter. He hadn't been sleeping well. Something was wrong. I asked him numerous times what was wrong, and he said, "I don't think I should tell you about it." Blair's cheery demeanor changed completely. He started to ditch work and would vanish for a couple of days before coming back home. He would look through the peephole on the door. It almost seems like he was trying to hide from someone. On his last day of work, after he submitted his resignation letter, he just left. He didn't even pick up his last paycheck. No one knew what was going on with Blair. Not until July, Blair finally told one of his friends that someone is after him and will kill him. But when the friends asked about who the person is and what he or she looked like, but Blair did not answer. He didn't go to police for help either. He just kept it to himself. Ever since he left his job, he was trying to run away from home. No one knew why. From his odd behavior, it is safe to say he was in an episode of paranoid schizophrenia. On May 7, 1996, Blair withdrew all his savings and emptied his safe deposit box of more than $6,000 in cash and $1,000 more in jewelry, gold, and platinum. He then attempted to enter the United States through ferry from Victoria, British Columbia to Seattle, Washington. Immigration officials flagged him as a possible drug dealer due to the large amount of cash he had with him. Once he was found to have convictions on drug and assault charges, he was denied entry. But Blair was desperate to leave Canada, so on the next day, he spent $1,600 on a round-trip airline ticket to Frankfurt, Germany. His flight would leave the following day, but just hours after buying the ticket, Blair was again desperate to get into the United States. He showed up at his friend's house, terrified, and saying that someone was trying to kill him, but his friend was unable to take him over the border. In the early morning hours of July 9th, a person was discovered by Canadian Border Patrol officers attempting to cross the border on foot at the Pacific Highway border crossing. And yes, the person was Blair Adams. When he was found, he looked scared and paranoid. There were some small scratches on his legs and fingers. It almost seems like he had a fight with someone. Because Blair's behavior was too suspicious, he was sent back to Canada. But why would Blair fake the Germany trip and then try to enter the United States at the same time? What were the motives? In the afternoon of July 9th, instead of leaving for Germany, Blair turned his tickets, rented a Nissan Altima from Vancouver International Airport, and headed back to the border. This time, he managed to slip through. He ended up in Seattle and bought a one-way ticket to Washington, D.C. By this time, he had already traveled more than 4,000 kilometers. It would be extremely difficult for anyone to keep up with him at this point. But Blair didn't seem to stop. For some reason, he is still running away from something. Blair arrived in DC early Wednesday morning and rented a car and headed to Knoxville, Tennessee, which is more than 500 miles southwest. Maybe the long trip and the lack of sleep had worn him off a little bit. Just 2 hours into the trip, Blair backed his car into another car. The driver of the car told detectives that Blair seemed nice, but was a bit odd because he kept looking around. Almost seems like he was checking if anyone is after him. Blair appeared at the gas station in Knoxville around 5:30 that afternoon. Gerald Sapp, an interstate repair service driver, had been called to the gas station. Blair had told the clerk there that he was having difficulty with his car key. He was unable to enter the car. When Gerald arrived, he checked the car and everything was fine. He then realized that the key Blair had attempted to use was for that of a Nissan Altima, the vehicle that he abandoned in Seattle, not the Toyota Camry he was driving. Gerald said he asked Blair to look into his pockets. If he drove this thing up here, he gotta have another key in his pockets. But for some reason, Blair wouldn't look. He even demanded Gerald to hurry up and fix the car. Blair was bound and determined that he had the key he needed for the car. Gerald could not do anything, so he arranged to have the car towed to a local repair shop and drop off Blair at the Fairfield Inn in Knoxville. On the night of July 10th, after 3 days of traveling over 4,000 kilometers, 4 different transportations, and 3 different cars, Blair finally had his first rest at the inn. In this hotel footage, you can see Blair wandering around the hotel lobby. After repeatedly going in and out for several times, he purchased a room with $100 and pocketed the key to his room. But instead of going to his room, he marched out the front door and never came back. And this will be the last time Blair was ever seen. Around 7 a.m. on July 11th, 2 construction workers were on their way to work and discovered a body in a parking lot, half naked, with his pants off and shirts open. He was lying on the shoe, and his pants and socks were lying near his body. They thought it was another drunk guy who had passed out in the parking lot. They proceeded to wake up the man, but it was then they realized the person was already dead. And yes, the person was Blair Adams. According to an autopsy report, Adams had sustained many cuts and abrasions. The forensics believed that some of the wounds came from fending off an attack. Blair was ultimately killed by a violent blow that ruptured his stomach. Law enforcement initially suggested the possibility that Blair's death had been sex-related, since he was almost entirely nude when discovered. The only physical DNA evidence found at the scene was 1 strand of long hair that was gripped in Blair's hand. After doing a canvass of the area, police located a construction worker who heard screams around 3:30 a.m., but he thought it was a woman's voice. The police quickly came to a conclusion that it was a murder, and immediately started to investigate further. But soon, they were all confused and started to question themselves. Is this really a murder? The forensics did not obtain any other DNA on Blair's body, and they couldn't find any matching DNA on the strand of long hair in Blair's hand either. So what really killed him? There were German, Canadian, and the US currency scattered around his body. In addition to the money found with the body, there were also black duffel bag which contained maps and travel receipts, and an open fanny pack which held 5 ounces of gold bars and gold and platinum coins, jewelry, keys, and a pair of sunglasses. Nothing was taken. Now, this case does not appear to be sex-related, nor a robbery. Blair was naked on the waist down, and his clothes were neatly placed around his body. If he was in a fight with another person, why would the person do such things after murdering him? Alcohol and drugs were not detected in Blair's body. At the end, the police believe Blair had some kind of mental illness, and he was experiencing one of his episodes, threatened by his imaginary attacker, and he had no choice but to flee to Knoxville, where he was killed. The conclusion was vague, just because the police themselves did not know how to handle this case. Jimmy Jones, the detective that was assigned to the case, told the media during an interview that Blair's case was the most bizarre case that he had ever dealt with. Until now, a quarter century had passed. The case still remained unsolved. The police did discover new things about Blair Adams. Sandra Edward, Adams' mom, stated that the reason why Adam went to the South is to attend the Olympics in 1996, and he had been in a romantic relationship with the male previously. It was definitely odd how she never mentioned any of these at first. But there were no connections between the 96 Olympics and Blair, therefore this new lead was useless. Before Blair was killed, he had been seen at several restaurants with an unknown man. The witnesses sat with a sketch artist and helped to create a composite. That was the best lead the police had, but the police were unable to find the person. Adam's mom asked him what was bothering him, but he said, "I cannot disclose anything about this," and refused to tell her what was bothering him. So what was this thing that Blair was so afraid of? Is it an actual person? Or is it imaginary? Or is it some kind of unknown force? Whatever it is, the thing followed Adam across 2 countries and tracked him down, had finally ended his life in an empty parking lot.